In 1984, the Soviet Union was struggling to feed its people. But in a small, cramped office at the Academy of Sciences in Moscow, they had just accidentally created the most addictive capitalist product in human history. Tetris wasn't supposed to leave the USSR. It was a research tool built on a computer that wasn't even meant for gaming. And yet, it would go on to spark a legal war between the world's most powerful corporations and the KGB. It involves a Soviet computer programmer who never made a single ruble off his own creation for over a decade, a British salesman who sold rights he did not actually own, a Dutch businessman who flew alone into Moscow at the tail end of the Cold War with $2 million in cartridges already being printed and his in-laws' house on the line, a federal court order in California that buried hundreds of thousands of cartridges in a warehouse. And in December of 2023, a 13-year-old kid in Stillwater, Oklahoma, sitting in his bedroom in front of an old TV, doing something every Tetris programmer in history said no human being could do. This is the story of every part of that. From a one-room office in Moscow to a kill screen on a CRT television almost 40 years later. To get there, we have to start where the blocks first fell, the summer of 1984, Moscow. Inside a building called the Dorodnitsyn Computing Center, run by the Soviet Academy of Sciences, a 29-year-old programmer named Alexey Pajitnov is doing what he always does on his lunch breaks. He is making a game. This is quite out of character, considering his real job is pretty serious. He is working on speech recognition and artificial intelligence on Soviet computers, including hardware the government hopes to one day put in fighter jets. The work is slow, the equipment is old, and the Academy has a habit of giving its researchers brand new machines without much guidance. So when a new computer shows up on his desk, Alexey does the same thing every time. He writes a small game on it to see what the machine can actually do. He has already built more than 20 of these. However, none of them ever left the building. One thing about Alexey is that he loves puzzles. As a kid, he obsessed over a Western game called pentominos, where you take 5 square shapes and try to fit them into a rectangle without leaving any gaps. One day, he buys a pentominos set from a store in Moscow, plays with it on his desk, and starts thinking about how he could turn it into a computer game. He picks the machine in front of him, an Electronica 60, Russian-built, weak, and with no graphics. The screen can only show letters and brackets, no images. When he tries to put pentominos on it, the machine cannot handle the math. 5 square shapes are too much, so he does the only thing he can. He chops 1 square off every shape. Now they have 4 squares each instead of 5. That's 4 blocks, or tetra, which in Greek means 4. He combines tetra with the name of his favorite sport, tennis. He calls the game Tetris. The first version takes him about 3 weeks. It runs in less than 3 kilobytes of memory. The shapes are made out of square brackets. There is no music, there is no scoring. The blocks just fall, and you arrange them, and when you make a line, it disappears. That is it. He shows it to a co-worker named Dmitry Pavlovsky and a 16-year-old high school intern named Vadim Gerasimov. Vadim is one of the few people in the building with regular access to an IBM PC, which has actual graphics. Over the next 2 months, the 3 of them port the game to the IBM, give it color, give it a scoreboard, give it sound. The version most people would recognize today is born. Then something starts happening that nobody at the computing center has ever seen before. People stop working. Researchers in other departments come by, ask for a copy, take it back to their offices, and disappear. Productivity falls. The director of the center asks Alexey to delete it. He cannot. By the end of the year, anyone in the city with an IBM-compatible computer has a copy of this strange Russian falling block game on it. The Soviet Union has very strict rules about who owns what. Under Soviet copyright law, anything Alexey creates while employed by the Academy belongs to the state. He signs a 10-year contract, handing over the rights to the computing center, partly to keep things smooth, and partly because that is just how things work in 1985 Russia. The man who made Tetris will not earn a single ruble from it for over a decade. He has no idea yet how much money is about to get made off the thing he wrote on his lunch break. But for the game to make anyone any money at all, somebody outside Russia has to find it. And in 1986, that is exactly what happens. Pajitnov's manager at the computing center, a man named Viktor Brabrin, sees what is happening with this little game and decides to send a copy over the border. He mails it to the SZTaki Institute of Computer Science in Budapest, Hungary. This matters because Hungary, while still communist, has loosened its grip on free trade in a way that the Soviet Union has not. Hungarian businesses talk to British businesses. Hungarian software ends up on shelves in London. A few weeks later, a Hungarian-born British man named Robert Stein walks into the Staki building. Stein owns a small London-based software publisher called Andromeda Software. His whole business is finding interesting programs in Eastern Europe, paying very little for them, and selling them in the West for much more. He has done this 70 or so times already. He notices someone someone in the corner of the lab playing what looks like a colorful version of a brick stacking game. He sits down, tries it, and within minutes, he is hooked. He tracks down the phone number for the Soviet Academy of Sciences. He sends a telex to Alexey Pajitnov asking for the rights to the game. The telex itself is a kind of early fax, a printed message that gets sent over phone lines. Now here is where things start to fall apart, and they will not get put back together for years. Alexey Pajitnov has never made a software deal in his life. He does not really speak English. He does not know that, in the West, even a casual reply on a telex can be treated as a contract. He sends back a friendly response saying, basically, yes, we are interested in talking. He thinks they are starting a conversation. Stein takes the message back to London and starts treating it as if he owns Tetris. Within months, he is selling rights he never actually had. He sells the European computer rights to a British company called Microsoft, owned by a media tycoon named Robert Maxwell. He sells the American rights to Microsoft's American sister company, Spectrum Holobyte. Both of them released Tetris in 1988. The game ships in a red box with Cyrillic lettering, painted as a strange, exotic export from behind the Iron Curtain. It sells over 100,000 copies in its first year. Meanwhile, Stein is still going back and forth with the Soviets, who keep asking him to actually sign a contract. The Soviet government has an agency called Elektronorg Technica, which everyone calls Elorg. Elorg is the only legal channel for licensing Soviet software to foreigners. And Elorg is starting to notice that a Soviet game is selling all over the West, and Soviet citizens are seeing exactly zero of the money. It would be bad enough if that was the only chaos. It is not the only chaos. Microsoft and Spectrum Holobyte start handing out their own sublicenses to arcade makers, to home console publishers. The Soviets gave Stein the personal computer rights. Stein gave Microsoft the right to put the game on different types of computers. And these are his exact words. Stein decides this means home consoles. The Soviets do not agree. By the start of 1988, half a dozen companies all over the world believe they own the right to put Tetris on a Nintendo machine. None of them actually do. And one of those companies is run by a man who is about to fly to Moscow with everything he owns on the line. Hank Rogers is Dutch. He grew up in New York. He went to college in Hawaii. He fell in love with a Japanese woman, followed her to Tokyo, and ended up running a small game studio in Japan called Bulletproof Software. By 1988, his studio is doing okay, but not great. In January of that year, he flies to Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show. He is walking the floor looking for new games to license for the Japanese market. He passes a booth that has Tetris running on a screen. He sits down, he plays a round, and he does not get up. He plays 4 rounds, maybe 5. He stays at that booth long enough that the people running it start to remember his face. He buys the rights to publish the game in Japan on personal computers from Spectrum Holobyte, then later from another company for the Famicom, which is what the Nintendo Entertainment System is called in Japan. He pays a lot of money for these rights. He bets his whole studio on this game. By the end of 1988, Hank's company has shipped Tetris on Japanese personal computers and, in December, on the Famicom. The console version sells fast. The game is a hit. He has made his money back and then some. Then a man named Minoru Arakawa calls him. Arakawa is the head of Nintendo of America. Nintendo is about to launch a brand new piece of hardware called the Game Boy. It is small, gray, runs on 4 AA batteries, has a screen the size of a credit card, and shows everything in 4 shades of olive green. Arakawa needs a game to bundle with it in the United States. The Nintendo team in Japan thinks the natural choice is Super Mario Land, since Mario sells everything Nintendo touches. Hank gets on a plane to Seattle. He sits across from Arakawa and says, and this is now a real quote that has been told and retold 100 times. If you want little boys to buy your machine, ship it with Mario. If you want everyone to buy your machine, ship it with Tetris. Arakawa thinks about it for about a day. He says yes. The Game Boy will ship with Tetris in North America and Europe. There is one problem though. Hank does not actually have the rights to put Tetris on a handheld. Nobody does. The handheld rights have never been sold to anyone, anywhere on Earth. He bought home computer rights from Spectrum Holobyte. He bought Japanese console rights from another company. He has been calling Robert Stein for months, asking him to formalize a handheld deal, and Stein keeps saying he is working on it. Stein is not working on it. Stein has been hiding the fact that he never had those rights in the first place. By February of 1989, Hank has loaned out enough money to cover almost $2 million in cartridge production. His in-laws have backed him with their property. The Game Boy is going to launch with Tetris on the box, with or without his name on the contract. He decides he has to do something nobody in his industry has ever done. He buys a plane ticket to Moscow. What he does not know is that 2 other men have just had the same idea. In late February of 1989, 3 foreign businessmen step off 3 different flights into Moscow within days of each other. The first is Robert Stein, the British salesman who started this whole thing. He has been getting angry letters from Elorg for months, saying he owes them money for sales he never reported. He is flying in to clean up his mess and finally get a real contract. The second is Kevin Maxwell, the son of British media tycoon Robert Maxwell, the man behind Mirrorsoft. Kevin's father is personal friends with Mikhail Gorbachev, who was Russia's president at that time. Kevin has been sent to use that connection to lock up the Game Boy rights for Mirrorsoft before anyone else can. The third is Hank Rogers, alone, with no contacts in Moscow, no Russian, and no appointment. None of the three men know the other two are in the same city. Hank lands first. He takes a taxi to the Intourist Hotel. He asks the front desk how to find Elorg, but they can't help him. The next morning, he hires a translator who walks him to the building where Elorg has its offices. The translator refuses to come inside. Foreigners walking into Soviet government buildings without an invitation can have their visas revoked, or worse. Hank walks in alone. He pulls aside the first person he finds, says he is here to talk about Tetris, and asks to speak to whoever is in charge. He is taken to a man named Nikolai Belikov, the new director of Elorg, brought in specifically to clean up the licensing disaster. Belikov is sharp, blunt, and not in the mood. Hank sits down across from him and pulls something out of his bag. It is a Famicom cartridge, Tetris on it, sold in Japan. He hands it to Belikov. Belikov stares at the cartridge for a long time. Then he asks, very calmly, who gave Hank Rogers the right to put Tetris on a console? So Hank explains the chain. Stein sold the rights to Mirrorsoft. Mirrorsoft sold them to Spectrum Holobyte. Spectrum Holobyte sold them to him. He has been selling Tetris on the Famicom for half a year. Belikov tells him something that changes everything in the room. He tells him that Elorg has never sold console rights to anyone. Not to Stein, not to Mirrorsoft, not to anybody. The only thing Elorg has ever licensed is the right to put Tetris on personal computers. Stein has been selling rights he never had for over 2 years. The hundreds of thousands of cartridges sitting in warehouses across Japan, all built with Stein's blessing, are technically illegal. Hank realizes, sitting in that office, that he has just admitted to selling stolen software to the man who can throw him in a Soviet jail. He could lie his way out. He could blame Stein. He could walk back to his hotel and disappear before anyone notices. He does not. He apologizes. He explains that he had no idea. He shows Belikov the contracts he signed in good faith. Then he asks if there is any way to fix it. Belikov pauses. Then he asks Hank to come back the next day. Stein and Kevin Maxwell arrive in Moscow within the next 48 hours. Belikov, now sitting on the most valuable piece of information in the room, sets up meetings with all three of them on different days. He never tells one businessman that the other two are in town. In Stein's meeting, Belikov hands him a brand new contract. The contract redefines a personal computer in legal terms, so narrow that consoles and handhelds are clearly cut out. Stein, desperate to keep his computer rights, signs without reading carefully. He thinks he is closing the door behind himself. In Kevin Maxwell's meeting, Belikov asks calmly if Mirrorsoft has any console versions of Tetris on the market. Kevin says no, of course not. That would be impossible without a license. Belikov pulls out the Famicom cartridge Hank gave him the day before, sets it on the desk between them, and asks Kevin to explain it. Kevin has no answer. He has just been caught lying inside the office of a Soviet state agency. The leverage Mirrorsoft thought it had with Gorbachev evaporates in front of him. In Hank's meeting, Belikov listens to a full proposal. Hank has already called Nintendo. Howard Lincoln, Nintendo of America's chief lawyer, and Minoru Arakawa, the company's American president, are flying to Moscow on the next plane. A few days later, Lincoln and Arakawa walk into Elorg with Hank. They sit across from Belikov. They put a cashier's check on the table. The exact number has been reported as somewhere around $5 million, but the figure has shifted with every retelling. Whatever it was enough. Elorg signs over the worldwide handheld rights to Tetris to Nintendo. A few weeks later, Elorg signs over the worldwide console rights too. Stein is left with personal computers. Mirrorsoft is left with nothing on consoles. Kevin Maxwell flies home to tell his father what just happened. Hank flies back to Tokyo. For the first time since 1986, every major piece of Tetris is in the hands of one company. And that company is about to change the way people on every continent travel, sit on buses, wait at doctors' offices, and spend their lunch breaks. On July 31st of 1989, the Game Boy launches in North America. It costs $90. It comes in a cardboard box with 4 AA batteries, a single gray cartridge, and a small instruction booklet. The Game Boy sells out in weeks. By the end of 1989, it is on the top of the holiday list of every American department store. By early 1990, 2.5 million copies of the Tetris cartridge have been sold. By 1992, that number is more than 7.5 million in the United States alone. By the end of its life, the Game Boy version of Tetris will sell over 35 million copies, making it one of the highest-selling video games games on a single console in history. The music does a lot of work here too. Pajitnov's original game had no sound at all. The Spectrum Holobyte versions had Russian folk songs to play up the Soviet angle. But for the Game Boy, a Nintendo composer named Hirokazu Tanaka takes an old Russian folk tune called Korobeiniki, written from a poem about a peddler bargaining with a girl in a field, and arranges it for the Game Boy's tiny sound chip. The version he writes will burn itself into the memory of an entire generation of kids riding in cars and waiting at airports. If you can hum the Tetris theme right now, you are humming a Russian folk song from 1861. Something else also happened. Tetris does not just sell to children. Businessmen play it on planes, mothers play it while waiting at the dentist, college students play it between classes. The Game Boy in America becomes the first piece of gaming hardware adults are not embarrassed to own. Nintendo notices and starts marketing it to grown-ups in suits. 4 years later, in July of 1993, a Russian cosmonaut named Alexander Serebrov packs his Game Boy and his Tetris cartridge into his personal luggage and boards Soyuz TM-17 for the Mir space station. He spends the next 196 days in orbit. He plays Tetris in zero gravity on his off hours, watching the blocks fall while the Earth rolls past his window. When the cartridge comes back to Earth, it is the first video game ever played in space. Years later, that same cartridge is auctioned off by Sotheby's for a little over $1,200. But before the space station, before any of the warm fuzzy stuff, there is one last fight to clean up. Because back in California, a company called Atari has decided that they are not going down without a swing. Atari has a subsidiary called Tengen. Tengen, through Mirrorsoft's old paperwork, believes it has the rights to put Tetris on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It has spent months developing one of the best-looking versions of the game anyone has ever made. Two-player mode, better music, a polished arcade feel. By the spring of 1989, Tengen has manufactured 500,000 cartridges and is shipping them to stores. Then Nintendo's lawyers send the cease and desist letter. Tengen pushes through anyway. They release their version on May 17th of 1989. Stores that stock it sell out. About 150,000 copies move in a few weeks. On June 21st, a federal judge named Fern Smith signs an injunction. Tengen is ordered to stop selling its Tetris immediately. All unsold cartridges have to be pulled back from stores and locked away in a court-supervised warehouse. On November 13th of the same year, Judge Smith rules in Nintendo's favor in a summary judgment. The case is over before lunch. Roughly 268,000 Tengen Tetris cartridges, brand new in their boxes, are pulled from store shelves and warehouses. They are taken to a secure location and destroyed. Today, a sealed Tengen Tetris cartridge can sell for hundreds of dollars on the secondary market. Some people consider it one of the rarest official NES releases of all time. Every one of them is a survivor of a pile that was supposed to be bulldozed. The man who designed that version, Ed Logg at Atari Games, would later sum up the entire fight in 5 words. He said Nintendo had bled them to death. For Hank Rogers, the man who started the dominoes that knocked Atari over, this is the end of the war. For Alexey Pajitnov, sitting in his apartment in Moscow, watching news clips of the Game Boy selling out in stores in countries he has never visited, the war has not really started yet. By 1990, Tetris has made hundreds of millions of dollars. Some estimates put it closer to $1 billion when you count all the licensing, the cartridges, the bundles, and the arcade ports. Alexey Pajitnov, the man who wrote it on his lunch break, has earned exactly $0 of those dollars. His 10-year contract with the Soviet Academy of Sciences gave the rights to the state. The state, through Elorg, has been selling those rights to Western businessmen. None of the money flows back to Alexey personally. He is still living in the same modest Moscow apartment he had in 1984. He still works at the same computing center. He has never seen royalties. What he has seen is friends. During the chaos of 1989, Hank Rogers and Alexey met for the first time. Hank did not have to drive out to Pajitnov's apartment, but he did. He brought his family. Alexey brought his. They drank together. They played other games Pajitnov had built and never sold. Two men who otherwise had nothing in common, both raising young kids, became close friends in a country one of them was not even supposed to be inside. When the Soviet Union finally collapses in 1991, Hank helps Alexey emigrate to the United States. The Pajitnov family settles in Seattle. Alexey starts working at Microsoft as their first staff game designer. He builds a few more games. None of them are Tetris. His old friend Vladimir Pohilko, the psychologist who helped develop the original game and was the first person to use Tetris in clinical experiments, comes with him. Pohilko founds a company called Animatech. He spends years trying to make it profitable. The story of what happens to Pohilko later is one of the saddest in gaming, but that is a story for another time. It is enough to say that the man who first told Alexey Pajitnov that this little falling block game could really be something did not get to see how the rest of the story turned out. For Alexey himself, the wait is almost over. The contract he signed in 1985 expires in 1995. Elorg, now privatized, no longer has automatic claim. Hank Rogers has stayed in touch through every year of it. He has been waiting too. In 1996, Alexey Pajitnov and Hank Rogers form a company together. They call it the Tetris Company. For the first time in his life, Alexey starts earning money from his own creation. A decade after most of the rest of the world had its Tetris boom. In 2005, Rogers and Pajitnov go a step further and buy out Elorg outright for a reported $15 million. The Soviet middleman that owned Tetris for 20 years is gone. The man who made the game finally owns the game. The story should probably end there. A long overdue happy ending, a quiet retirement, a guy who can finally afford to stop riding the Moscow subway. That is not where it ends, because the game itself is about to enter its third life, and the people running it this time will not be programmers or businessmen. They will be teenagers with controllers doing things to Tetris that nobody who built it ever expected. For most of the 90s and 2000s, Tetris keeps doing what Tetris does. It gets ported to every platform that exists: PlayStation, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, DS, mobile phones, Facebook. By 2014, more than 425 million paid copies of Tetris have been downloaded on mobile alone. The game is everywhere, all the time. But while the casual world is tapping screens on the bus, a smaller group is building something else. They are obsessed with one specific version, the one that came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1989, 8-bit graphics, CRT television, the original kill screen at level 29, where the blocks fall so fast that no human, in 1989 logic, could possibly keep up. In 2010, a documentary film crew sets up a small tournament in Los Angeles to see who can play that NES version the best. They call it the Classic Tetris World Championship. A guy named Jonas Neubauer wins it. He wins it the next year too, and the next, and the next. Across the first 9 years of the championship, Jonas Neubauer makes it to the finals every single time and wins 7 of them. Other top players openly call him the greatest of all time. Then in 2018, a 16-year-old kid named Joseph Saleh shows up. Joseph plays Tetris a different way. The standard way to move pieces in NES Tetris is to hold left or right on the directional pad. The piece slides over at a fixed speed. That speed is the limiting factor at the kill screen. Joseph does not hold the pad. He taps it. Players call this hyper-tapping. With it, Joseph can play past level 29. He can even play past level 30. Later, he flies to Portland, Oregon for the 2018 championship, hoping just to qualify. He makes it to the finals. He sits across from Jonas Neubauer, the man who has owned this tournament for nearly a decade. He sweeps him 3 games to nothing. The video of that match, posted on YouTube, will go on to be watched more than 20 million times. It is the moment classic Tetris stops being a thing for 40-year-old guys at retro game expos and becomes a thing teenagers want to do. New players flood in, new techniques get invented. Then in 2021, a player named Jacob Huff brings a brand new technique to the championship. Cheese Martinez had been playing with it. Huff puts it on the world stage. They call it rolling. Rolling looks weird. You hold the controller in one hand with one finger pressed on the directional pad, and you tap the back of the controller with the fingers of your other hand. The taps push the controller into your first finger and register as inputs. You can roll faster than you can hyper tap, faster than the game thought any human would ever try. Within a year, every world record in NES Tetris breaks, then breaks again, then quadruples. Players reach level 50, 60, 70, levels that the original programmers never even gave proper colors to. The game starts behaving in strange ways. Pieces flicker, backgrounds glitch, the display gets weird. And then, in early 2021, the entire community gets a piece of news that knocks the air out of it. Jonas Neubauer, the original world champion, dies suddenly from a heart issue at the age of 39. He never gets to play with the rolling technique. The trophy at the championship is renamed in his honor, a small gold tetramino piece with a quote of his engraved on the back. The quote says that if you are a high visibility player, it is on you to push the community in a positive direction. And so the community keeps pushing. A new generation, raised on YouTube videos of Saleh's sweep, starts hunting deeper, past level 100, past level 120. Somewhere in Stillwater, Oklahoma, in the bedroom of a 13-year-old, the hunt is about to end. His name is Willis Gibson. Online, he goes by Blue Scooty, named after a real star. The largest known star in the universe, by the way. He is 13 years old. Late at night, on a CRT television his family bought because he asked for one. In late 2023, Willis is one of the strongest rollers in the world. He has been climbing through level after level on stream, going further than almost anyone else, hunting the one thing nobody has ever reached, the actual end of the game. The point where the code itself runs out of room and gives up. The Tetris programmers in 1989 never thought a human being would get past level 29, so they never built the levels above it properly. Past a certain point, the game's memory starts wrapping around itself. itself. Eventually, in theory, you can push it so far that it crashes. You can break it. In the world of competitive video games, that crash has a name. Players call it the kill screen. The true end. The moment where the software gives up because the human in front of it has gone further than the programmer believed possible. For 34 years, no human had ever reached that point on NES Tetris. Only an artificial intelligence, in lab conditions, had ever pushed the game far enough to crash it. On December 21st of 2023, Willis Gibson is streaming live to a small audience. He is on a run that has been going for 38 minutes. He has cleared more lines than anyone in the history of the game. He passes level 150. The screen is flashing. The pieces are barely showing up. At level 157, the screen freezes. The chat on his stream is exploding. Other top Tetris players are watching live. They are screaming for him through their headsets. The video clip of those 18 seconds gets cut and shared across the internet within hours. By the next morning, it is on the news in the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Russia. Willis Gibson, 13 years old, has done what 1989 said could not be done. He has beaten Tetris. A few days later, he is invited onto a Zoom call by a journalist for an interview. The journalist asks him a few questions. Then she says she has a surprise. The screen splits. Two more faces appear. The first is Henk Rogers, the Dutch businessman who flew to Moscow alone in 1989. The second is Alexey Pajitnov, the man who made the game on his lunch break in a one-room office in the Soviet Union when Willis Gibson's parents were still in school. So the guy who made Tetris, the guy who sold Tetris, and the guy who beat Tetris all met. 40 years of falling blocks sit in the silent space between three faces in three different time zones. Tetris started as a side project on a computer that could not even draw shapes. It crossed a border on a floppy disk. It survived a licensing war that ate companies whole. It bundled a handheld console into the most successful piece of portable entertainment of its decade. It went to space. It came back. It outlived the Soviet Union that owned it, the British media empire that fought for it, and the company in California that tried to stop it. The man who made it earned nothing for the first 12 years. He earned it back, and a lot more, in the next 20. And that was the history of Tetris. Thank you for watching.